Good morning, good morning, good morning. I am Tamara Johnson Shealy. Good morning. It is Saturday, August 22nd. It's the day after my birthday. Yesterday we had a party online, and I want to thank those of you that were able to join us. I have to tell David all about it. I think he's here. Yes, he's here. There he is. Good
Hello.
morning,
Happy
David.
birthday. Happy
Thank you.
birthday, Tamara.
Thank you. We had a party yesterday online, David. We had a
Yeah,
DJ and everything.
party.
It was so hilarious because it's like, I remember back when I first moved to Atlanta, I told the story of how when I first moved here, David, I was a club head. I would go, I love to dance. I don't drink, but trust me, if you got me in a club full of music, I would dance all night long. So it just kind of took me back to the times when I was, out there having a great time before I had children, living life.
Footloose and fancy free, huh?
Oh gosh, yeah. So we had a party last night and I was aching this morning. I was like, oh my gosh. So I don't have it like I used to, David. How have you been?
I've been good. I've been good. I'm uh, finished up a long essay that I was working on that I have somebody who's reading over, and I'm going to work with her on getting it into shape for first, I'm going to use it in my class, the Emory continuing ed class, Osher Lifelong Learning Institute, that starts on Tuesday, uh, September 1st.
Mm.
And
Online? I'm sure you
yeah,
guys
it's going to
are
be
virtual.
Zoom. It's going to
Yeah.
be Zoom. Yeah.
Aren't you
So,
glad you're so, you fought me for a long time on getting a computer, but aren't you glad like you're so up to speed,
yeah.
David?
Yeah. Well, I'm far from up to speed, but at least I know how to work it. At least I have a computer with a camera, and and I can or click on the links, and get the setup. So yeah, it's really it's really good, and and I kind of like the Zoom. You could see people and uh, uh, you know. Watch them while you talk, and I seem to have good quality sound on this computer. It's really
Yeah. Yeah,
great.
good for you. Good for
Thank
you. He said that he had a great time last night. We had a party, David.
you.
We had a party, David. It was awesome. Awesome. So we actually have a guest this morning. We're gonna go ahead and bring her in. Miss Luanne Taylor. Good morning, Luanne.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm very good. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. This platform, we use it to bring a voice to issues, activists, and activism around Georgia. So I thank you for joining us. Tell us what's going on up in, is it Brunswick that we're watching this race?
Well, yes, I was. I was at St. Simon's. I saw you were at Tybee Island. Is that where
Hmm.
you're from?
I'm from Savannah, but Tybee
From
is right there.
Savannah. Oh,
Yes.
well, it was beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And of course, the reason I was there was because one of our independent candidates for Brunswick District Attorney, Keith Higgins, has turned in his massive independent candidate petition. He collected almost 6,000 signatures in a pandemic, of all things.
Mm,
Now,
mm.
this is the largest petition that's been turned in. Of course, we don't have a lot of records for the state of Georgia, but in a long time. I think in 2016, someone turned in 5,900, but they still didn't have enough to make the ballot. So Keith definitely has enough to make the ballot. Independents were granted a 30% reduction on signature requirements this year because of COVID-19. We can thank Martin Cohen, the Libertarians, for going to court on that one for us. Sadly, it didn't really help the Libertarians or the Green Party, but it helped independents greatly.
Why don't you talk about what it means to run as an independent? Like, what does that? Because let me tell you, when I was going to run back in 2014, in the very beginning, I considered running as an independent, and my son was like, "Mom," my oldest son at the time, he was in high school. He was like, "Mom, this is a two-party country. You're going to have to pick a side."
Aw, that's so sad.
I have a democratic heart, and I appreciate the democratic platform. So of course I run as a Democrat, but I'm very independent in my thinking. But
Yes.
talk about that, Luanne. What does that mean to be an independent?
Okay. Well, I have you in my sights. I have every intention of trying to recruit you as an independent. As a matter of fact, you are driving around the country. You're driving around the state, and it's wonderful watching all the cities that you go to. Now, if you had run for the U.S. Senate seat in a normal race as an independent, tomorrow you would need 51,686 handwritten signatures.
Wait, 51,000?
51,000. Have you seen 51,000 people in all your trips?
No.
Maybe. No. Okay. Well, that's funny. Well, you're not done yet. Although your petition would have to be turned in by now. So it's pretty impossible to do. Therefore, why do people choose to do it? Because some of us just don't want to join a party. Parties change, parties are corrupted, parties are for instance, Jim Crow was a Democrat. I know that was a long time ago and all, but I just don't feel the need for the title of a party. And I don't think our country was, the Constitution was not written for two parties either. There are no parties in the Constitution. So there are a lot of people who feel that way. In fact, registered independents now outnumbered Republicans. I'm not sure about Democrats, but they're just we're diehard independents. We don't want to join a party. And the proof is in the pudding that we have so many people that still try to do it every election season. We have 9 for state seats and 29 independents running for local seats.
Say that again, Luanne.
There are 9 independent candidates running for state seats. From the district attorney in Brunswick, that's considered a state seat. And then we've got Joe Reed, and he is State House District 129. He has made the ballot. He collected almost 2,000 signatures. He needed 1,710. Now, he could have just as easily signed up to run as a Democrat or a Republican, but instead he wanted to be an independent, and this is the task put before him. And he won. He did it. He made it, and we know officially he is on the ballot. We're still waiting to hear on some other people, but Joe Reed is definitely on the ballot and he is Flovilla and Gray and Jackson, Monticello. So he's about an hour south of Atlanta, his district. So we're very happy for the people of District 129. They have the opportunity to vote for an independent this year. Exciting.
Luanne, let's talk about Keith Higgins, because that's a really, I think it's real illustration of what an independent candidate is, why it's so important to be able to have access to choice on the ballot, because he's running against the DA Jackie Johnson. And why don't you tell a story there so that people can connect it with what they know about Ahmaud Arbery and
right. Jackie Johnson is the DA that handled Ahmaud Arbery's case. Now that happened really in February. Does anybody know the exact date? And of course, Keith Higgins really didn't register. He was already collecting signatures. Let me put it that way. When Ahmaud Arbery the event happened. Keith began collecting signatures. You can start mid-January. When session starts, when the legislative session starts, independents can start collecting signatures. So Keith was already he was already collecting when the incident happened. But without Keith on the ballot, Jackie Johnson is running unopposed. And of course, she's run unopposed before. We have a real chronic problem of people running unopposed. So it ended up being a really big deal. Now, obviously, the people of Brunswick jumped on the wagon because Keith managed to collect almost 6,000 signatures in a pandemic, the biggest petition in a long time. And they are currently being verified by the counties. But that really didn't start until last Friday. So I went down to the area to try and get with some of the counties to learn more about the verification process. There's so much we don't have. There's not a manual. There's no, rules, written rules. So we don't know what counts, what doesn't count. If they forget their birth date, does it count? For instance, one issue, a man named Bill, something, signed his signature, Bill something, but his the signature on file says William. So, does that count? I believe that one indeed does count. But in the process of this, it all just got started. And then all of a sudden we have an article in the Brunswick News that basically is talking about Jackie Johnson has hired a private investigator to investigate Higgins' petition in the DA race. So what a twist that is on the whole, blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah. And when you say investigate, Luanne, does that mean they're going to go back and literally audit, like go back and look at each of these signatures? What does that mean?
When I was in Brunswick, I talked to Keith Higgins and he said, do you know anything about some people going around talking to my petitioners, the people that collected for him? And I said, oh, no, I don't know anything. And it was like the next day, a whole article was printed in the Brunswick News, and it's Jackie Johnson hired a private investigator. So the issue here, of course, with me is that there's no manual for a petition. There's the code, which Keith Higgins and I have been studying for a long time to get it all right. And my goal for the independents is to come up with a manual, a how-to guide on what you can and cannot do. So, Keith Higgins certainly got that from me, but you get nothing like that from the state of Georgia. So my issue here, my main question is, how did this private investigator get a hold of the petition? It was only turned in a couple of weeks ago. You would have to have the petition to know who the collectors were, because each collector has to have their signature notarized. It's another very overwhelming process with the petition in Georgia. For instance, Keith Higgins, his petition was 712 pages. Well, that's 712 notary stamps. And at $4 a stamp, that could really, really cost people money. So, of course, Keith, I believe, ended up, finding pro bono notary publics, which was something I was also wanting to do this year for candidates, is finding people that will notarize for free. But he got it done. And, of course, you have to be careful with your notaries. They can't have anything to do with they can't be a collector. They really shouldn't be a signer. So you have to be just downright paranoid about the notary process. So anyway, it's just a very interesting twist that's on it. And we, we'll just have to wait and see what happens. And big mess in Brunswick.
Oh my God.
All this work, right? All this work to keep one man off the ballot.
Loosely legislated. That's what's coming to me. Like there's no real, so there's no real rules to how independents are to run or to petition. There's no, and it's It's complicated.
Very complicated. The laws from 1943. I spoke to David last night, and he was talking about, the two-party. We're a two-party country. What did your son tell you? We're a two-party country. No, we're not. Well, we are, but we don't have to be. But anyway, the law that we're trying to change was in 1943, and it was really written to keep communists off the ballot, is what they said. But it was really also a Jim Crow law to keep, anyone that's not one of the two parties off the ballot. And it has worked absolutely wonderfully. And since 1943, I mean, we just are a different mindset, a different country, a different geographic, space where we have to drive, to collect all these signatures. We're not all living in a little, dainty town. So, the law needs to be updated. So
here's some comments. It says independents don't want to do that much work. Just a thought. I think independents probably do a lot more work.
We've done more work than any of you thus far. Even though Tamara, you're doing a great job. But no. The independents are out there talking to more people than most candidates.
Yeah. Yeah, he's saying asking everybody to retweet. He said the revolution will not be televised; it will be uploaded, live streamed, and shared. And one says, "Are the fees more or less for independents?"
They're the same. So we pay $400 and then go collect 2,000 signatures before you're considered a real candidate. So the Atlanta Journal, they're not going to call you a real candidate yet. They won't take you seriously until those signatures are verified.
Well, let's just step back a minute and point out what the last straw was. I think for a lot of people who got on board with Keith was the Jackie Johnson refusing to prosecute the two guys who the father and son who murdered Ahmaud Arbery, and saying that because the older man was a former member of the Brunswick Police Department, and she felt she had a conflict of interest, or whatever it was, whatever excuse she gave, she was letting the prosecution go, delaying the prosecution or the decision about whether or not to prosecute him. And it was only because the video leaked that the rest of the state got involved, and the governor appointed this woman from Marietta, I guess, African American. I don't know whether she was a district attorney or she's. But
I think so, actually.
What's that?
Yeah. I think that is what happened. Jackie Johnson recused herself. Another one recused themselves.
Exactly. Yeah. So
honestly, I don't really know that much about that side of it. But basically, what caught my eye is that Jackie Johnson is running unopposed again, not the first time, unless this independent gets on the ballot.
Right.
So he has certainly put in his time to make that ballot, and we'll see. We're confident, actually, that everything's going to come about. But the PI investigating thing, I'd like to talk to him about that myself.
Yeah,
like, where did you get that petition? I haven't been able to lay my hands on a petition that easily. Yeah. So where did it come from? Anyway, we'll find out.
That's the kind of thing that in Florida, when in years past, when they were doing aggressive voter suppression in Florida, which was mostly the Republicans, because in this day and age they want to keep the vote down as low as possible. But one of the things that they were doing was that they enacted criminal charges for petition gatherers who had false signatures on their petitions.
Yeah.
And So, clearly this is all intimidation tactics.
Yes.
And in this case, it seems to me that can you imagine if you're a person who's, somebody who's a citizen activist getting, a knock on your door from a private investigator, that's really threatening. So,
Very intimidating.
yeah, I really think that that this is, while it may not be illegal, it's certainly the kind of unscrupulous campaign tactics. And I mean, I don't know whether Jackie Johnson is a Democrat or Republican, but
She's an independent, but she did not collect signatures. She calls herself an independent, but she was appointed. She was appointed. So as I looked into this and I saw she was an independent, because again, we don't have records, historical records on who made the ballot as an independent and who didn't. So my first thought was, wow, did she manage to collect 6,000 signatures? And the more I looked into it, no, she didn't. She was appointed, but she does call herself an independent, which is another sort of mind blower. And we're going to have an election with 2 independents on the ballot.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
That's unusual too.
Yeah.
But back to the intimidating law, we have our own intimidating law. It is in fact Georgia Code 212-171. I was told earlier by a county that this is what they use to verify the petitions, like it was sort of instructions. But when you read it, there's one line that says each county shall verify their own signatures. And then the rest of the code is just an intimidating, laundry list of how you go about picking up your, someone that signed or someone that collected or the candidate themselves. And oddly, I had brought this code up to Chris Harvey earlier in the year because I wanted to monitor the process for the counties. Chris Harvey is our elections director, Georgia elections director, Chris Harvey. So anyway, I told him about the code, and I said, if a potential candidate read that, it would intimidate them to death. No, nobody would go on with the process. So when all this came up, that was the first thing I told Keith Higgins. I said, Keith, I think Jackie Johnson has read 21-2-171, and you better go read it too. And, we'll see how far it goes. But these people worked so hard, and I have no doubt that they did it absolutely legitimately. So we're not really worried about anything. But I of course, am happy for, I'm happy for any article on the subject of independence.
Well, there's a lot to be said for what this law that you're talking about 1943 and the ballot. The law regulates the registration of parties for elections. In other words, right? That's what's going on there. So it's not just for independents; it's the law for Democrats, Republicans, and any other parties that, right? And we have to keep in mind that during the Jim Crow South, from the late 1890s until the Civil Rights Movement, or until actually the Civil Rights Voting Rights Act in 1965, that Georgia and most of the South were one-party states. The Republicans were completely eradicated from office during that period of time, and the Dixiecrats, the Democrats from the South, who ran on platforms of white supremacy, had eliminated the black vote, which was a part of the most important, an important part of the Republican Party base in the 1870s, 80s, and into the 1890s. And since the Democrats could not, because of the 15th Amendment, they couldn't eliminate the black vote. What they did was they set up a white primary, right? So the white primary was the way in which they erased. They eliminated blacks from voting in the Democratic Party, and then there were all of these poll taxes. In other words, a head tax on was levied on anybody who wanted to vote. So poor people in general had a very difficult time unless they could fit into some of the exemptions that were established. And this is where the famous grandfather clause comes in, and other ways in which, in effect, the Democratic Party, the Dixiecrat Party in the South, picked their voters. The Democrats in the South essentially picked their voters, and there are people in Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, South Carolina, who won elections to the Congress, to the House of Representatives, with 5,000 votes. In California, in the same congressional district, supposedly representing, because congressional districts are represented by population, right? The number of voters, that actually participated in the election was in way over 100,000. So in most cases, 150,000. So you have the House of Representatives, in which Southern Democrats were coming into office, election cycle after election cycle, and just never running a campaign.
David, just like you said last night, they're also picking the candidates.
Yeah,
and this law is what has helped them for 76 years, because nobody else can get on the ballot.
Right.
Democrat, exactly. Republican. I guess we're lucky we have two parties. I don't know what to say.
Well, I'm not so sure that we really have two parties, because in effect, what happened was that as the Voting Rights Act was implemented in the 60s, gradually all those Dixiecrats became Republicans, and the Republicans are in effect the party of white people, in the states. So they now have the Republican Party's primaries are 95% white. So they've got the white primary back, except that this time it's legal, because they're not disinviting anyone from participating. It's just that they represent, the defense of racial privilege and white supremacy for, most African Americans just will not tolerate it. So, or other people of color, and so they all vote Democratic. But because they
so independents, we're not uninvited either.
Yeah,
they make that very clear. We're all welcome, but we have to pay a $6,000 signature poll tax before we are actually on the ballot. So it really it falls into voter suppression. And I have written more than one letter to Fair Fight. I keep hoping Fair Fight is going to sort of pull us in, to their Fair Fight, because we definitely, the numbers need to change, which hopefully in 2021 we may make some progress. But another thing I kept track of this year, David, is what my independent candidates competition, either whether they're Republican or Democrat, how many votes did they get in the primary votes, I think are interesting to look at, because basically our candidates are collecting sometimes 50% of the primary vote, not 5% of registered voters. I mean, it is 5% of registered voters, but it ends up being 50% of primary votes. So the numbers are way exaggerated, even though we're making it, believe it or not. If this is the law and that's what we've decided, we just have to do it. until we can get some people in there to change it. And anyway, I'm very proud of them all this year. We've done very well in a pandemic.
These are Georgia state laws that have to be changed. This is how.
Well, actually, it's 21-170. That's the code that handles petitions for independent and minor parties. 21-2-170. 21-2-171 is the intimidating code. Well, 170 is quite intimidating too. When you read through the whole process, it's pages long and explains the process, but in very legal terms, which most of us can't really wrap our heads around right off the bat. So,
well, I think it's really worth repeating that you've been trying to get Fair Fight to that is Stacey Abrams' organization.
Fair Fight over here.
Yeah, to pay attention, and it makes me concerned. Let me put it that way, that they're not responding. Because that gives it a sense that it's more partisan than it ought to be. When you're
right, still partisan. If you're not going to include everybody, then it's still partisan. You want to have a fair fight for Democrats? Well, that's not really what independents. And don't forget, there's a lot of us. So
that's not talking about a fair fight. That's wanting to work the refs for your side, and they really should be getting in touch with you. And anybody who knows anybody in Fair Fight ought to be raising this issue with them, because that's it's not right. It's just not right. They need to.
David, another thing we talked about last night that we wanted to bring up today was ranked choice voting. Now, when you go to the legislators and talk about changing the independent candidate laws, you can just kind of see their eyes glaze over. There's just no interest, in it right now. But when you talk about ranked choice voting, that they perk up. Now, tomorrow you are in a race where ranked choice voting would absolutely be tremendous. 21 people, I believe you have on the ballot. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
4 independents. Did you know that?
Mm-hmm.
4 independents. So, because again, they don't have to collect signatures. They don't
have the pandemic, right?
No, because it's a special election. Special election. We don't have to collect signatures. So you actually could have run as an independent without collecting the signatures this time. Isn't that amazing? So 51,686 signatures or nothing. So anyway, we have 4. One of them used to be a legislator, Valencia Stovall. Now, she did once, in 2018, she was one of our sponsors for a bill to reduce the number of signatures. So, she's a friend of the independent, and now here she is running as an independent. So, and then there's 3 others, which I have not a lot of information on. And then there's you, which I wish I had recruited right off the bat, but foolishly did not. But, there'll be future races. How about that?
Well, Luanne, I also think that it's worth mentioning, as we talked last night, and I have written some protests about this, that the Democratic Party establishment, including John Ossoff, running for the Senate seat, have essentially anointed Raphael Warnock as the Democratic Party candidate, and there has been no primary that determined that he was the Democratic Party candidate, and Tamara is running as a Democrat, and I imagine that there are others who are running as Democrats as well. So who died and left him boss? Or who died?
Good question.
What's that? Yeah, I mean it's like he has been appointed by the Democratic, establishment, and they're funneling money to him, and it's not a fair fight.
Right. It's not a fair fight. But with ranked choice voting, if we had ranked choice voting, there are out of these 21 people, I like 4 or 5 of them. I think we have some good people in the race, but I only get, one choice out of 21 candidates. With ranked choice voting, we could, move in this, Tamara would be number 1, and then, number 2, number 3, number 4, and it would be a great opportunity. So honestly, in 2021, I'm really going to start pushing ranked choice voting because people are interested in it. It only kicks into play when you have more than 2 candidates, and in Georgia, that is so rare that
But it would encourage people to run.
Well, right. Eventually, they'll probably feel better allowing independents on the ballot, knowing that it was ranked choice voting instead of one or the other.
Are there any states already? Are there any states already that have ranked choice voting?
Well, Maine passed it. A lot of military use ranked choice voting. 5 southern states use ranked choice voting for their military. Georgia is not one of them, though. And people are very interested in ranked choice voting. So I have a feeling if you just get out there and talk it up, and it's going to go hand in hand with my mission, which is getting independents on the ballot, because without independents, it doesn't even come into play. It eliminates primaries, it eliminates runoffs. It will save money in the long run. So it's really very exciting.
Let's bring Egberto in. Egberto gives us a national political update. Hi, Egberto.
Good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing? Tamara, feliz cumpleaños, mujer. You're joining.
I think that's happy birthday.
We are joining. You're joining. You're getting close to us in age, girl.
Yeah, Egberto, I'm getting on up there.
That little baby that we met in Arizona is gonna be. Well, by then you'll be
knocking on 50's door.
But by then you'll be senator. Don't worry about it. So I said, you know how that goes. Anyhow, how you guys doing this morning?
Good. How are you?
That was some good discussion on independence. And David, I heard you mention the magic thing as far as the Democrats having their anointed ones, and it's all a racket, man.
Yeah.
We are looking at our anointed one. It doesn't really matter. Okay, we have our own anointed one. You're wearing her T-shirt, so that's cool.
Well, it's funny. I was listening to Bill Maher last night. Had Reverend William Barber on, and he was talking about the Kentucky governor's race and how much the Poor People's Campaign had organized around that governor's race,
right?
And the slogan was "From the hood to the holler." Hollers are Kentucky.
David, yeah. I'm gonna bug you right now because I'm gonna be concerned that you have a mic or something in my office. Because the truth of the matter, when Tamara tells me I come on to do my national review, today I said, wow, the thing we need to cover is the Democratic Convention. And what about the Democratic Convention am I going to cover is what Dr. Barber had to say about 15 minutes ago.
Oh, okay.
So it's like, what, do you have a mic or something in my office?
Let's give it. Let's pass the ball back to Egberto. We can talk about it, not David.
Okay, good. All right. Here's the deal. Dr. Barber was not part. I mean, I kind of like the convention, but Dr. Barber pointed out something that I hadn't noticed that I should have noticed. He said not once did they use the word poor in at the Democratic convention, and he said, it seems, and me expanding on what he's saying, it's almost like we have not learned who our constituency is. Because if you do not acknowledge the indigent and the poor, which in this country is making up a much larger percentage than anyone would believe, what the reasons that I always say America has a tendency to suffer in silence. A lot of time it's not that they're suffering in silence. I like to say they're suffering being ignored, because we ignore a very large segment of our population. If you doubt it, in San Antonio, in Houston, in San Diego, in Los Angeles, and all these places, there are food lines all over the place. And you watch your local news, you watch your national news, and you may see a 15-second spot of that, but they don't show you the depth of the crisis that's occurring in this country right now. So everybody thinks that things are just going fine. They're not going fine, and unless we do something about it, there's not going to be change. So having programs like this that opens that opportunity to be out there, I think, is so important. And with that, that's my national statement of the day.
We are in a recession, Roberto, and it's so sad to me that I feel like people are being ignored. I have been traveling around the state of Georgia, and I've seen the lines. And Egberto, these lines are so long. They're hours and hours and hours long.
Tamara, I'm sorry to interrupt the senator, but I have been watching your videos, and I've seen, and all I'm going to tell you is, with all the traveling that you are doing, I would hope that you would do more, because those are people that otherwise would. They don't have YouTube. A lot of the folks that you're talking to, they don't have a YouTube account. They don't have a social media account. So, and they don't have ABC, CBS, NBC, and all the local stations going to the places that you're going throughout the week. So your coverage that you give to them is all people have ever seen of them. You mentioned a place in one of your videos. I'm like, oh, so there's a place like that exists. Okay. I think it's
There's a whole county, Egberto, Talbotton, Georgia, Talbot County. Talbot County does not have one. They don't even have one grocery store.
It was scary.
In the entire county, there's no grocery stores. And I had somebody on social media literally attack me for saying that putting that out, like there's stores there, and he wanted to challenge me that there were stores there, convenience stores, these corner stores. There's stores where, and he was like, there's an obesity. And then he told me there's an obesity rate of such and such percent. I've said, of course there's an obesity rate. These people are eating junk. They're eating junk. So of course it's not like they're not eating, but they're eating toxic foods.
The problem in the country right now is we have 20% that are holding the things, and that 20% has amazing shopping power. I can imagine. I don't know if anybody here is rich or not, but we are probably all middle class, I would assume. And our purchasing power is so much greater than that 70% below. It's so hard to fathom the kind of curve that we have in this country. It looks just like a third world country, and nobody is talking about it because we suffer in silence, or we suffered leaving some ignored. And until we change that, what can I say?
I want to thank you, Egberto, for giving us a national perspective and staying in the fight. This is not easy, so I appreciate all the great work that you're doing. You can find Egberto Willies Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. This man is everywhere. Politics done right with Egberto Willies. Thank you.
Muchas gracias. Y'all have a wonderful day. And by the way, all the things she said apply to my little sis up there.
Right. Thank you, Egberto.
All right.
All right, Luanne, Yeah, running as an independent, I thought this was a conversation that, I think there's more people that are that are independent. They think independent because not all Republicans are wrong and Democrats are right. It's just not how it works. And I think for me, I can speak, there's policies on both sides that I can agree with. And I see where if they come together in certain aspects, we could really get some things done. So I appreciate independence, honestly.
Thank
They're
you.
not stuck in one party ideology over the other. And so many candidates, and this is where it pisses me off, Luanne. So many candidates toe the party line for their own political gain. They're doing it because they have to. They're not doing it because it's the right thing to do. It's because it is expected of you as a certain party member. So you have to go along to get along, because if not, there could be, some backlash later. So
they never seem to turn anyone away, which is what I find a little concerning. It's like anybody can run as a Republican. They don't seem to vet. They don't. It just seems like we are stuck with whoever's willing to run. And again, people choose to run as Republican and Democrat because it's easier. And I know that in 2018, I contacted every single contested race in Georgia and asked them, about changing the law for independence. And so many people came back to me and said, oh, I'm an independent, but there was no way I was going to get through that petition process. So I just, ran as a Republican or a Democrat, which shows me again that, the extreme people are it's a very small percentage of extremists, one way or the other. Most of us are, right down the middle. We want certain things and not other things, but we're not extremists. And so that's another reason to be.
And party politics is messy. It's messy.
Yeah,
it's messy.
It doesn't have to be, but most people were just very normal, wanting to do their part. They weren't, crazy trying to change the world. They just felt they, could put in some time for the state of Georgia. It's a job. It's a part-time job, and we absolutely need them. I really appreciate the people that go to the trouble of running for office. As you see, it is no easy chore. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate them. I don't want to do it, to be honest. So we need good people. But my fear is that humongous portion of America that just has completely stopped voting, I'm afraid they're just independents that never had a choice on the ballot except, one party or the other. And over decades, they just quit going. They just decided they weren't voting anymore.
One of the things I mentioned to you when we were talking last night, Luanne, was that the elected officials in this country really come from a small slice of the population. The upper 10% of the population is the people who are capable of taking time off from their work, have jobs, or have substantial wealth that allows them to take the time to do this kind of, or they are in they are entering the track of the party hierarchies, and so there's a lot of self-selection that's going on there. I mentioned to you, and I've said this on the air before, that less than 1% of the people in Congress, in the Senate and the House of Representatives, are people who come from a background, a working class or middle class background, making somewhere around the median income of $55,000 a year, have the kind of jobs that we associate with people who work in factories, offices, and construction and those things. Less than 1% of those people. Now, some of these folks that are in there are worth hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. Senators, the average senator has a family wealth of $5, $6, $7 million. And Kelly Loeffler, of course, is worth $300-400 million. So we're dealing with an entire Congress that is totally skewed to millionaires, and understands and represents their interests. And for some, and for many of them, I think that that's the way that the average person in the United States lives. And even down at the state and local level, the number of people who come from working class backgrounds is less than 3%. So you have that aspect of it, and of what's going on with that, and the other aspect of it is that there are things. When you talk about independence, I don't think of independence as being people in the middle. I think of people who are primarily interested in things like having health insurance, having background checks on guns. I mean, on gun registration. These are issues which 70, 75, 80% of the population agrees to in opinion polls. Can't get them through Congress.
Let's give Luanne some time, because we're gonna let her head out. But Luanne, you want to have some final words for anybody that wants to run as an independent? What would be your advice to them?
I would say that an independent is someone that I don't know, maybe we don't like authority. We don't like being told what to do. We don't like being told how to vote. We sure don't like spending time raising money for a corporation that really isn't attached to our government in any way, shape, or form. So, but we're as different as DNA. So you're going to have to check us out. Which is a problem with Republicans and Democrats. We don't check them out. They just sign up for one or the other, and you assume that they're completely on your side. I guess I'm not sure. Yeah. I've had no choice but to vote for Republicans and Democrats my whole life. So it's not like I dislike them so much. I just am ready to take away the stronghold they have on our country. And now they seem to be having on the media, they're spreading, it's spreading. And it's just time to get some independents on the ballot. And I think we'll see, the waters calm a little bit, but, maybe every vote won't be down to, one person, that's going to either, go one way or the other. We'll have some more meaningful conversations. And certainly the independents that are elected are going to have more time to do their job. They're not, forced to raise funds constantly or this or that. And
right.
I think ultimately it's going to be good for the country. So time to change those laws. And 2020 the 20s are going to be the decade of petitions. So I hope that everybody will get used to them and learn how to do them properly, get them turned in properly, and get on the ballot so that people will start having more of a choice when they go to vote.
So one last question before you go, Luanne. If somebody runs as a Democrat or Republican and decides after they're elected to become independent, they don't have to go through the process of actually getting petitions signed, right?
Not for their current term, I don't suppose, but when it comes time to register to qualify again in March, if they put down independent, then they
would have to do the petition process all over again.
I would surely think they would. Now, in Georgia, you only have to do it once. So, let's say that some of my candidates make it, Joe Reed, Keith Higgins, in 2022, they won't have to collect again.
Because they would be incumbents, right?
Right. If an independent is an incumbent, then they shouldn't have to collect. But I just don't believe they could just change it like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a good question. There's so many things we don't know. That's why we're watching the process so carefully and making notes and seeing, how we can ease this burden in the future.
Well, Luanne, you are a friend to this broadcast. Please come back and keep us updated. We're
I'm a
definitely
fan.
gonna, yeah,
I'm a fan.
thank you, thank you. We're gonna have Mr. Hopefully, we can reach out to Keith Higgins. I would love to have him on. David and I actually talked about it. So if he's available, we would definitely love to talk about his race.
Okay, thank you so much, Tamara, and good luck. I'm enjoying all your correspondence and your YouTube videos. I think you're doing wonderful. So
Thank you. Have a great one, Luanne. Thank you.
Bye, David. Thank you too.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Luanne. Appreciate you coming on. Yeah.
David, that was some great information.
Yeah, I think it's really important that we break this duopoly, any way that we can. I mean, third-party candidates have a particularly difficult time in the South, but because it seems to me that the Republicans who dominate most of the legislatures and the state houses and the governor's offices, the executive branch, they have made a kind of a deal with the Democrats as a minority party, and the Democrats don't rock the boat, which would mean doing the kinds of things that the Poor People's Campaign did in Kentucky, to raise awareness about the about the need for Medicare for all. I mean, they are the ones who got the governors, who voted in the Democratic governor who expanded Medicaid in the state, and that's for poor people, whether they're African American from the hood or European American from the holla. So there's the only way that we're going to get representation for poor people is if there is a building of that relationship, of that solidarity relationship between European American and African American and other people of color, who are working people.
Well, we're sure. You know what? From what I've seen in some of these areas that I've gone in, Black people and white people and Asian people, well, Hispanic people. Haven't seen a whole lot of Asians, but definitely a lot of Latino families. When I tell you they're all in the same position economically, they're in the lines. They're needing assistance. Yeah. They need. We're all in this together.
Yep, and it's what Egberto was saying about William Barber, and I sort of followed through the convention, and Barber is absolutely right. It's like poor people don't exist. They're 43% of the population in this country now, and probably a majority at this point because of the pandemic. Mm-hmm. That allows the Republicans in the Senate to just go home, go on vacation, and not pass the leave people who were getting $600 a week. That extra unemployment insurance had lowered the poverty rate during the time that it was, they're really, and the response to that is, oh, well, people are staying home. They're not going to work because they're getting more money on unemployment insurance than they would in a job. Well, that says a lot right there, about the low wages in this country. Mm-hmm. The only way that's going to change is if I think, staying in my lane is if there are European American progressives and leftists who are waking up European American working people who have a message for them, and are not simply going out and chanting Black Lives Matter. The way that European American progressives can act to support African Americans, in Black Lives Matter, is by going out and organizing European American working people to bring them, into the struggle for Black lives, for African American rights, because that's the way to get solidarity. Not not to just say, oh, and I disagree with the whole thing about we're all in the same boat, because racial privilege still exists. There is inequality within the working class. And we need to present that to European American workers, that the idea of solidarity doesn't mean that you get first, first choice, or you get to go to the head of the line. The way that you do it is that we're all in it for each other, and that the principle of seniority and one person, one vote, and all of these other things are part of the picture. And no one. Anyway, I do think that that we ought to talk sometime. I hope that they will get in touch with us, with the Democrat who's running against this QAnon woman who won the primary in the 14th congressional district up in Rome and Dalton, in that area, because he ought to be able to win against. They're saying she's gonna just walk into Congress. Because
those are conversations, those are candidates that we definitely need to have on. So definitely what's his name, David? What's the candidate's name?
His name is Kevin Van Ausdal.
Well, he's definitely somebody we want to have on the broadcast. We want to have a conversation with him. We are at the top of the hour. We had a very full broadcast. I totally enjoyed Luanne, because she spoke the truth about party, being an independent. I mean, like I said, I'm very much so independent in my thinking. All Republicans ain't wrong and all Democrats ain't right. So I like to be able to. Her conversation was right on point. She talked about how the raising of the money, and that is so entrenched in being in one party or the other. It is your call time, is what they call it, and it is your how much money have you raised, and they really qualify you based on how much money you've raised. They quantify you, like how much money have you raised that makes you a viable candidate. No, it doesn't make me a viable candidate. How many votes can I get? That makes me a viable candidate. So David, I want to thank you for being my co-host and riding this road with me, being on the campaign trail with me with your t-shirt on.
Yeah. Got to get me a colored t-shirt.
Yeah, I got to get you a colored one.
Tamara, I think what you're doing is great. What you're doing, going around the state like this, really getting in touch with people out there, is it's heroic. I mean, it's tough to be on the road, and especially at this time with the risks being high. You got to keep safe. You got to wear your mask, keep your distance.
And I'm drinking I'm drinking my little cup here. I'm drinking tea. I drink tea, y'all. I drink herbal teas a lot. Make sure my immune system is boosted or heightened. I've kind of, anytime I feel anything, I'm drinking and nurturing my body so that I don't get sick out here. I can't afford to be sick, y'all. So I'm doing everything I can to stay safe. So David, you can find Mr. David Slavin at the top of the hour at Acknowledge the Divide right here on Facebook. I am Tamara Johnson Sheely, your candidate for the United States Senate. Please go to my website. Please donate, volunteer, vote. We have a race to win in this coming November.
Right on. Power to the people.
Power to the people. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
See you next week. See you next week, everybody.